My name is George Plimpton, uh, particularly known for what's called participatory journalism, which means that I enter other people's occupations very briefly in order to write books and write articles about what happens to me. I've done it in football, playing with the Detroit Lions. The book was called Paper Lion. Pitching in the Yankee Stadium, Out of My League was the book out of that. 3 rounds with Archie Moore, the light heavyweight champion of the world. Wrote a book about that called Shadow Box. Goaltender with the Boston Bruins, wrote a book about that called Open Net. Power forward with the Boston Celtics. Well, I was asked to go out there to Lawrence of Arabia to be an actor. That was the idea. And I think the magazine was Huntington Hartford's show. It may have been a Hefner early magazine that's now defunct. This was, of course, in the early 60s. Was that when the film was made? Late 50s? Anyway, I went out to Jordan and went down to the Wadi Rum, which is about 200 miles south of Petra. Rose red city half as old as time. Way south of there. In this amazing country with these great buttes, and they look like upside down battleships, the strange pink of the desert. And 6,000 Bedouins had arrived to be in this film. The largest congregation of Bedou since the First World War. They're in their black tents. And I arrived there, remember, I was wearing sort of Brooks Brothers shoes like this. And I toiled up wearing a suit, not a suit maybe, but you know, toiled up this sand dune to where David Leon, who was the director, he'd had a bad day. And I went up there with the public relations man, and the public relations man said, "This is Mr. Plimpton, he's supposed to be in the film, he's writing about it for a big American magazine." And David Leon said, "If you want to be in this film, you go on down there. You can be in it down there," pointing to the encampment of the Bedou. So they got me outfitted in the Bedouin outfit, you know, the great sort of caftan-like thing, my Brooks Brothers shoes. And I went down there and had the most electrifying few days of my life down there with the Bedouins. An arrangement had been made where at 5 o'clock the film company had to move 50 miles away. The actors, many of them flew down to Aqaba on the Gulf, and the film crews just moved away 50 miles, leaving the Bedouin encampment alone. And that meant that the women who'd been up in the hills hiding from the infidel's eye, they began coming. You'd hear the trucks go off into the distance and the dust would settle, and then all of a sudden these long lines of women in black would begin coming down from the hills to rejoin the encampment. And the encampment took on a life of its own. And it was remarkable. I was sort of taken in hand by these kids. I could speak one phrase in Arabic, which is, "Where is the nearest post office?" That's all I could say. And they would come from tents around to hear me say, "Where is the nearest post office?" And I became sort of, and then the children were great. They put me on camels, on a camel race. I was the only one there in the entire, among the 6,000. And the night times were just fantastic. At night, they would all gather. And so you can tell that the size of the importance of the sheikh by the number of poles in his tent. A very lowly sheikh will have, 2 poles, and that goes all the way up to 6 poles. I think I was in a 4-poler or a 3-poler. And you got served dinner. There's a partition in the tent, and the women hand the food over, and the men sit in a circle. And you're usually fed by your host, so you sit there, and he'll mix up something from this bowl in front of you, and he'll pop it in your mouth, like feeding a bird in its nest. And you have to keep it down too. You can't sort of gag. And then they have an instrument called a hababa. I think I've got one in the other room, which looks like a cigar box with a couple of strings, very primitive looking thing, and it's plucked and you hand it from person to person. And they either sing or they tell a story. The first 2 nights I didn't know what they were doing because I couldn't understand what they were saying, but the third night I think it was an interpreter came along, and I was interested because in some of the stories they kept using the word Shakespeare. I thought how interesting it is that these Bedouins would know Shakespeare, and it turned out that William Shakespeare was a captain who did the same thing that Lawrence was doing, blowing up railroads, blowing up the Turkish railroads, far to the east of where Lawrence was doing his blowing up of Turkish railroads, and he was quite a hero. Captain Shakespeare, they didn't much like Lawrence. They thought Lawrence had sold him down the river at Sykes-Picot, which was the great petitioning of all that area in Damascus. But they loved talking about Shakespeare. Anyway, the Hababa came around to me one night and I sang, dunk, dunk, way down upon the Swanee River, far, funk, punk, far away. They thought it was just terrific. I don't think that song has ever been sung in such foreign circumstances as that. I've tried to find myself in the film. I went to the opening, and there's a scene where Anthony Quinn rides up this sand dune with Peter O'Toole, Lawrence. He's the head of the Abutai, his tribe. And he rides up this dune and he fires a gun into the air, pistol. And the Abutai come out of their tents. No, I guess that was his name, Aouda Abutai, that was his name. I can't remember the name of the tribe. And I was in the tent waiting for the rocket to go off, which meant that I had to run out of the tent with these other 3 people. And I heard the rocket go off, and I said to them, this is method acting. I said, Aouda's arrived. And ran out of the tent. And I've yet to find myself. A little tiny dot way out there, one of the dots in that scene. So I put that down as my first film credit. Lawrence of Arabia. Won an Oscar. Oh, John Wayne was quite wonderful. He was not at all what I thought he was going to be. He was much more sympathique, as the French say, to people that I thought he would have very little liking for. Truman Capote. I just finished a big book on Truman Capote. Always in the middle of working on one, and he was fascinated by Capote. I'd read him. Turned out to be a terrific bridge player, again, which surprised me. We played a lot of bridge, chess. Talked with great compassion about some people and with great knowledge. He just wasn't the redneck that I was told I was going to be. Wonderful with the crew, was always playing liar's poker and joshing with them. And so many actors, go and they sort of sulk in their trailers and their tents, like Achilles, and they never come out except when it's time for the set. Wayne was over, and what was interesting was that he spent a lot of time writing that day's script with John Huston, who was the director. These yellow pads. John Huston used to allow his extras to pick the manner of their death. And there's an example of that. I think he did Scarface. And he said to one of them, he's one of these guys who was going to be mowed down by a machine gun. He said, anything you'd like to do? And he said, well, maybe I'm just flipping a coin like this, and it comes down tails, just as the gun goes off and knocks him over. There's one in a bowling alley. How about supposing I bowl the ball into the gutter? Or maybe a strike, I've forgotten which one it was. And so he said to me, George, you're going to be shot down in this ballroom scene. You come in to kill the Duke, and we can't have that, And it so happened that the scene I was in, or maybe it wasn't there, but I thought it should be put there. It was a moose head. And I thought as I was shot by a man wearing red pajamas up in a balcony. I had no idea who he was in the script, but that's very much like life. You get shot by a man in red pajamas, and if you're extinguished by that shot, you have no idea, who the hell that guy was anyway. And my notion was that just as the bullet hit, I would fling an arm up like this and bring this moose head off the wall down in a sort of a great heap. And then the camera would move in on this glass eye of the moose. Pretty strong stuff. You know, this dead glass eye. John Huston looked at me and said, "That's the worst goddamn idea I've ever do it my way." So that was that. They wired me up with these so that it would simulate being hit by this blast from this shotgun I guess the guy in the red pajamas had. And there were these wires that came out through these holes in the wall. And I had a line, "This here's your warrant, mister." Which my cosmopolitan accent is not right for "this here's your warrant, mister." But I practiced a lot, trying to Texan it up a little bit. And I remember the day of my big scene, the director said, "George, we've decided to change your line." And I said, "Wait a minute, I've been working on that for a week." And they changed it just slightly. And as soon as I said that to Wayne, who was sitting there at this table, he gets up and he whacks me in the jaw with a rifle butt. And then the guy in the red pajamas fires. And just at that, they had these little squibs that were attached to me, and they sort of puff up like this. And then these guys backstage haul like this, so that I was hurled into the wall. Great crash. And a very effective big scene. And sort of half dazed, I remember lying there thinking, this is what it's like. Yeah. True participatory journalism. Well, that's of course Lawrence Arabia. That's Peter O'Toole there, and this is way down here is the encampment that I stayed in. They're the black tents. This is in the Wadi Rum. This area goes on forever. My tent was way in the back here. This is Brigitte Bardot with a guitar, serenading somebody rather, it wasn't me, but anyway, she sent that picture along once. This is my role in the shootout at Rio Lobo. There's I am. I grew a sort of a semi-beard there. Very tough guy. This here's your warrant, mister. You can see that guy's growling out. He got shot by a man in red pajamas, as I was telling you. This is the circus, standing next to my first wife, Freddie. There I am as a clown. I frighten children as a clown. I mean, you can't be too big. I seem to. And here we are. There are the flying Apollos there. I played briefly with the Edmonton Oilers as a goaltender. I don't think anybody could ever guess who the guy is standing next to me there, the choir boy, but that, of course, is Wayne Gretzky. We barely believe that's the greatest force ever in hockey. This is the world's largest firework over here going up. It's a firework that the Grucci's and I made, 700-pound firework, and it's going up and exploding over Titusville, Florida. Blew out 40 windows, a lot of burglar alarms. Didn't work very well, but that's the huge thing. It was a world record for a while. The Guinness Book of World Records, the world's largest firework. Eclipsed by the Japanese, who built a bigger one. There's the cover of my fireworks book. I had great fun writing that. Fireworks, a history and celebration. There's Fighting Archie Moore, way on the left there. You can see most of the people in the audience are roaring with laughter. But I looked pretty good there. I was in great shape. I ran around the reservoir for almost 6 months, just quit smoking, and we became good friends, Archie. He was a great man. He was the sort of predecessor to Muhammad Ali in terms of having fun with the press. There the two of us are after the fight. I have a red bloody nose. He broke my nose, as a matter of fact. This is pitching in the Yankee Stadium. Elston Howard was my catcher of the Yankees. I don't know who was at bat, but you can see it's the old stadium. But there's where I learned to throw this great big roundhouse curve when I was a kid. And I threw this curve to Frank Thomas, of the Chicago Pirates, I guess he was, and he hit the ball into the triple deck over here. I never saw anything like it in my life. I was sort of pleased. I sort of, look what he and I have done together, which is not the way you're supposed to feel about these things. They're sitting in the Yankee dugout. That's Whitey Ford, the Yankee bat boy. This is football there I am ignominiously falling down. There's Joe Schmidt, Terry Baer, Whitlow, the center, myself. Here I am. Alice Forte was a coach. Can't tell who these guys are, but they don't look all that confident, do they? I'm calling things in the huddle. Here's a picture with Willie Mays. Here's old Willie. You can see my hat's got on screwed up here. That was just before the game. I got him out on a pop fly. I was terribly pleased. I mean, his batting average against me is 0.00. This is playing with the Baltimore Colts. This was in front of 110,000 people in Ann Arbor, Michigan, against the Detroit Lions. This is Bill Curry. He and I did a book together. He was the center. Great man. This is a guy called the Bowling Ball, they called him. He was one of the fullbacks. And I've just thrown an incomplete pass. But that was exciting. That was a huge crowd. It was the largest crowd ever to see a professional football game up until that time. This was about 5 years after the Detroit Lions. You know, when we were doing these big documentaries for ABC, and they wanted me to go back and play football again. Right. So to pick a new team, I played with the Colts that time, and the game was arranged against the Lions. Exhibition game, of course. This is a great elephant I went looking for in Africa. Ahmed, supposedly the world's largest elephant. Look at those horns. They're just great, graceful lyre-like things all the way down. Lives in a strange part of the world, up in the northern part of Kenya. A place called Marsabit, which is sort of a mountain fastness that comes out of the desert, the Shelby Desert. And these big mountain elephants live in there. One of them was this elephant called Ahmed. Thought to be the largest elephant in the world, but it turned out he was finally died, I think, from injuries from poachers' bullets. And his statue sits in the Nairobi Zoo. It turned out he wasn't as big as they thought, because he wasn't, you couldn't put him next to these big elephants in the Tsavo. But it's still a wonderful sight with these great... That handprint is Hunter Thompson. He got angry at something I wrote about him, and so he sent me the Black Hand. And we're great friends. We have these jokes like that. This is a rhino which just charged me, and I took this picture just as it charged. So I have very dramatic memories of that. I had no gun, nothing. This is the hunter I was with, ran. There were three of us out in this meadow. It was quite funny because the rhino turned and the hunter said, "Run!" And there was a tracker with us, and I was the first in line, the last in line as we were looking at the rhino. So as I turned and ran, suddenly I was outpaced by him and outpaced by the tracker. And we sped across for the Land Rover at full time. My wife was sitting in the Land Rover, so it was very funny because the rhino stopped about 7 steps after this, but here were these 3 grown men with nothing coming after them, running at absolutely top speed. She never forgot it. This is Hemingway down here. And here's a picture of Hemingway. This is in Spain. This is an area we're out. This is called a tientas, where you go out and you fight against the calves. They really are. It's where they test the calves. And here I am, as you can see. I'm in the Beretta. I don't want to have anything to do with this, although I did come out there and do what you do anything that Papa told you to do. This is outside of Madrid, and I was down there talking to him about the craft of writing. So I don't take a shower in this bathroom, otherwise it would destroy all this memorandum.
Yeah.
This is the world's largest tennis trophy, which I won out at Las Vegas. As you can see, it's got a guy in flannels playing on the top, and it's got a big bowl. And I won this thing playing doubles with B.J. Armitage, the Indian player. And he says it's the biggest trophy he's ever seen. He had to send his home by sea. This is the coaching staff of the Detroit Lions. Here's George Wilson, the guy that gave me the playbook. These are all his assistant coaches. That was the number I wore, 0, as being indicative of my talents. This is a page of Hemingway's The Battler, that's what it's from. It's from The Battler. Well, it was a page to illustrate the interview that I did with him on the craft of writing. This is playing with the New York Philharmonic. That's about to hit a gong with that. Nervous, as you can see. Well, most of them are for coming in second. The little ones are for coming in. There's tennis, a lot of them, most of them. Here's the football one the Detroit Lions gave me. I think this guy got confused. It says to the best rookie. I think it was probably to the worst rookie in football player in Detroit Lion history, but I think the guy just got confused. They must make a mistake. He probably put in best. This is Leroy Neiman. I think what Muhammad Ali used to do before he would pray very briefly to Allah in the ring. This is Marianne Moore here. We took Marianne Moore and Muhammad Ali and the great poets, both of them, and I took them to have lunch at Toots Shores. Toots didn't like Muhammad Ali. He stayed out of it. There was no one in there but the 3 of us. And they wrote a poem together. This is mostly Muhammad Ali's words. She only wrote about 2. He's much too quick for her. She, one of the great poets of the age. Oh, he's a wonderful poet, yeah. Right off the top of his head. I'll read it to you if you like. After you defeat Ernie Terrell, that's in Marianne Moore's handwriting. Oh, Ernie Terrell will catch nothing but hell. Terrell was big, tough, and tall, but when he fights me, he's sure to fall. If he criticized this poem by me and Mrs. Moore, that pleased her enormously, is not the next champ. She will step in 4. That was nice too, the suggestion that she should step in and take his place. He is claiming to be the real heavyweight champ, but when the fight starts, he will look like a tramp. He's been talking too much about me and making me sore. After I am through with him, chat Mrs. Moore, or something like that. These are a lot of telephone numbers he wrote down. I mean, these are probably all hotels. No one seemed to answer them. And Miss Moore says wrote lines 1 and 2, and Cassius Clay, he was then, wrote lines 1 through 10, just prior to the Terrell fight. I think this is that same poem. They should be together. Yeah, that's, I guess, Muhammad Ali. This is about beating the bear, finding punches from everywhere. It looks like he wants to fight me again. He wrote a lot of the, interesting, he wrote some of the lines the first down the bottom and then wrote this way, writes up from the bottom, as I guess some poets do, backing into his last line. This is a thing from the Lampoon, Harvard Lampoon, which is where I got started writing, I think, more than any other place, writing humor at any rate, or trying to write humor. This is the review of the novel I wrote about Sid Finch. Yeah, he could throw the ball 168 miles an hour. He was the subject of an April Fool's story. Well, they got 2,500 letters in response after that. Some people were very angry about Sports Illustrated doing things like that. His name is Joe Begner. He was a school teacher from Chicago, a friend of the photographer. He was wonderful. He had a great foot with a claw-like toes. He was just exactly what I had in my mind when I wrote about him. It was amazing because he's a great spindly fella with his long leg. And when I saw the pictures at Sports Illustrated, I suddenly realized that by some absolute stroke of luck, this alchemy, that he was exactly the person I had in my mind's eye. The famous one was of pitching in the dunes, knocking down these tin cans. This is Caroline Kennedy, on her 8th birthday. I was her best man at the time. That's John Updike and Bill Styron and myself. When Bill Styron got an award, the McDowell Medal. This is the staff of the Paris Review here somewhere. There's Donald Hall, the poetry editor, William Styron there, Peter Matheson, John Marquand. There's the smallest thing Christo ever wrapped. Actually, he told me that he'd actually wrapped something smaller than that. He's wrapped the Paris Review himself, but I'm told that he wrapped a matchbox once. I can no longer say that's the smallest thing he's ever wrapped. Fireworks is a great passion. This is a picture of the bicentennial. You can see the great burst of chrysanthemums around. There's the Twin Towers down there. There's a great burst in here all the way around. Well, John Lindsay wanted me to be the commissioner, and I'd just gotten married and books to do and everything, and so I couldn't do that. And he said, well, what would you like to be the commissioner for cultural affairs? And I said I couldn't do that. And he said, well, what do you want to be the commissioner of? And I've had this long fancy for fireworks, and I said I'd like to be a fireworks commissioner. So he sort of invented this honorary post. It's not in the Green Book, which is the official book. I'm the only commissioner who does not resign after a change of administration, on the grounds that to resign from a position which doesn't really exist would throw City Hall into more confusion than it already is. We're doing a documentary. We thought we'd enter the world of professional wrestling, and that I would go down to a place just north of the Pennsylvania border called the Monster Factory, and it's where professional wrestlers are trained. And the notion is that I would go down there and train a fighter. I would become his manager. The name of the fighter that we have in mind is the Grecian Urn. And he'd be sort of a Fey character, I guess, a 400-pounder. He'd have tattoos on his body, little snatches of verse. He would have to learn some Keats, of course, and some Shakespeare. He would learn how to swear at his opponents in Shakespeare. The devil damn thee, black thou cream-faced loon. So I would have to learn how to be a rather extravagant wrestling manager. The Grecian Urn will enter the ring, and he would come out there and shout Keats at his opponent and at the crowd. And the history with this fighter would sort of be strung through the documentary. And I suppose the documentary would end with either a glorious win for the Grecian urn or a catastrophic conclusion of his short career. But it struck us as an interesting bridge to bring all these adventures and this something of my rather odd life to the viewer.